Coming up on this episode of the IoT Inc. Business Show.
AI today is getting better at learning. In fact, learning is what differentiates what we call AI from advanced analytics. Machine learning algorithms minimize an error function by autonomously and iteratively adjusting their model variables. But what's next for AI and machine learning? In this episode of the IoT Business Show, I speak with James Canton, who in a meta way makes predictions about this prediction technology.
All this and more on this episode of the IoT Inc. Business Show. The people, the business, and the technology of the next generation internet. This is the IoT Inc. Business Show. And now, here's your host, Bruce Sinclair.
Hello and welcome to the IoT Inc. Business Show. This show is for business leaders and managers employing the Internet of Things for their business or the business of their customers. I'm your host, Bruce Sinclair, and I interview the industry's leading authorities to find out how they use IoT to improve business and create value. If you like this show, subscribe to it on iTunes and go to iotinc.com to check out my complimentary articles, videos, meetups, and webinars. First, a little housekeeping. This is the last episode of our 8-part mini-series on AI in IoT. It's made possible by the ICIP program. And if you enjoy this podcast, check out the IoT Inc. Certified IoT Professional, or ICIP, online training and certification program. Become a certified IoT professional by taking the program's 3 courses. And they are ICIP Technology, ICIP Business, and ICIP Strategy and Digital Transformation. Details of which can be found at www.iot-inc.com/training. This week's ICIP graduate shout-out is to Vivek Shrivatav. I probably mispronounced that. If you're looking for an IoT boss for your organization, you can get to Vivek's LinkedIn profile from our homepage on www.iot-inc.com. This is the first of 6 of 40, so far, graduates that have gone through the program. Now, I've received some feedback from some listeners that my typically 1-hour-long podcast is a big investment of their time, and that I should consider breaking my podcast into 2 more manageable pieces. So that's what I'm trying here. However, one person told me the plan was terrible. The full episode with the show notes will always be available on the www.iot-inc.com website. But let me know what you think about this 2-part breakdown of the podcast. Makes sense or not? You can let me know at bruce@iot-inc.com. Now, if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, do that now. Otherwise, let's pick up where we left off with James. So I want to kind of try to bring this down to a little bit of firmer terra. For everyone listening, okay, I can hear what you're saying. AI today is good. It's good for learning. It's good for teaching. I think I can get there. Monitoring, alerting, like you were saying. And then you're saying in the future, it's going to be more autonomous. So this is more of a semi-autonomous. It's more an advisory role. It tells us things, although it's being used in some cases autonomously. But what's I understand, the food example or the food chain example. But if you're saying then in the future, AI is going to be more autonomous, is that what you're suggesting that people listening to us right now are thinking about how to use AI in the future? Just thinking about it that it's going to be autonomous, or do you have other advice on the future for AI?
Well, I think that's just a framework to think about the capability set. I think the more important thing is being able to build value. So if you're manufacturing stuff, or you're a SaaS-based company, or you're in entertainment or media, or any vertical, I think the challenge is going to be, what are the cognitive services that AIs could provide that would give you an edge to understand. I mean, we have a problem right now. We're in the era of big data, which means that we have too much data to figure out where the business value is and how is it going to support our business strategy. So if you're running a large SaaS-based global media enterprise, you're really interested in what are my customers, where's the market, where's my competition going, how can I delight my customers better and provide, take the friction out of the relationship or even optimize knowledge so that we could deploy my AIs for better analytics or metrics, or even be able to create products and services that I learn from my AI analytics that will not just delight my customer, but create entirely new opportunities and new markets. I think that's the upside. And, we've got a lot of data, simply put, that we don't, we went through an era where we had data that was paper, and then we went ahead and scanned all of it and put it in what we called a data warehouse. Nobody read it when it was there, whether it was paper or whether it was digital. We had no way to search it. Then we turned it into databases and it's searchable. Gee, that's great. But we need AIs to help us figure out what customers want, where markets want, how to increase, adaptability, and also how to create products and services that I think will delight folks that we're not doing. Because right now, the product cycle for development is based on either market research, which uses to a certain extent some AI, not enough, but it's a very human, arbitrary kind of process. That's why there's a lot of failures in all that. The other part of this is just about efficiency. Are there more efficient ways for us to run our businesses, that we can learn from this mashup of AI and IoT? And I think that that's probably a whole area of tremendous opportunity. But just if you're just looking from the point of view of trying to capture, understand, and build more insight into the customer's mindset about what he or she wants, is interested in, not just today, but tomorrow, I think AIs can help with that dramatically. And I think that's the future of what I mean by kind of this cognitive advisory capability.
Yeah, and I think what you're really describing is innovation and invention on one side and operational efficiency on the other side. But most of what you're saying now, I can swap in the word analytics, and we are using, for example, usability models, utility models to understand how our customers are using our products, what they're using it for, and the delta there is where we can innovate on our products. We are using analytics for operational efficiency, asset utilization today. So what I'm trying to understand is it just better? Is it just better what we have today, or is it going to be something, or in the future, is it going to be something different than what we have today? Because we're doing more or less what you said today.
Yeah. So you have most of it right, except for one secret. All right. So can you keep it? Can you keep a secret?
I can.
All right. Here we go. It's just between you, me, and all of your listeners. Here's the big secret. We're in the midst of an AI war right now.
Mm-hmm.
Who is in that AI war? Well, the usual suspects: Google, Microsoft, Apple, Baidu. There's about 10 others. Samsung. And how is it working out? Well, how it works out is you have major competitive companies. By the way, that's at the core. And then you've got 5 other layers of enablers and folks that are divided up. So it's kind of it's a keiretsu of AI companies that are doing, meaning a keiretsu, meaning like an ecosystem, an AI ecosystem of battles and battlers that are going on right now in terms of competition. Why? You put your finger on it. It's not that we're not using analytics. Yeah, we're using analytics, but it's who has the best AI to be able to do, higher velocity decision making. Who has the best AI to figure out, blue ocean opportunities where we should be exploiting new markets and customer segments that others are not, or not doing a good job. It's who's got smarter capabilities that can be delivered faster for competitive advantage. It's not just about, okay, check the box, cloud, check, analytics, check, No. We're not, and that's the misnomer. It's like IoT and AI are just two. There's AI, IoT, blockchain, AI, VR, and AR. These are just the weapons in this global battle for customer market share, for profitability, for, you got to reverse the algorithm. It's not just, that we're doing these things, it's how well you're doing them. And there's different flavors of AIs that are being trained to be involved in this. And the ones that are the smarter have the evidence of, again, the metrics are things like market share and things like product acceleration and things like delighting customers and creating loyalty and identity. So that's the war that we're in right now. This is not the far future. This is going on right now. It's just going to get, it's like training your armies for this kind of battle. This has already been going on. The issue now is there's just so much, there's so much wallet share. There's only so much customer mind share. And, there's only so many markets. So at the end of the day, that's the battle that's going on. You can see it between, on the AI side, the most obvious example is, my wife the other day was saying how that Alexa wasn't operating properly. I plugged it into the kitchen so I could watch what she and the kids were doing. And, I said, well, show me what you're doing. She said, well, I talked to Siri and Siri wasn't working. I said, you mean Alexa? She said, no, I mean Siri. I said, you understand that Alexa doesn't respond to Siri, right? She said, oh, I got confused because Siri's on my phone.
Right.
Siri. What I'm trying to say is these are obvious examples of the foray. Why did Amazon give away basically a lost leader in the game? What is that? Alexa is an IoT AI. It's the largest experiment for AI where basically it was brilliant. They gave it away to everybody. And they did what Nest was another example that Google did. Nest never turned on. So just imagine every object waking up tied to a network that can both give, receive information. And then what are the implications of all that in terms of IoT, in terms of your business?
Yeah. No. And I think I'm getting something I can get my hands on, and from a business perspective, and that is what you're saying. I think is AI is going to make, let's call it analytics, but let's say AI is going to make analytics faster and better, or maybe more usable, and that I can get my hands around.
That's right.
Right. I mean, at a high level.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
For competitive reasons. I mean,
that's right. That's right. That's right. And it's tunable. That's the other really important thing. It's tunable, and it will be and then eventually it'll be tunable from an opportunity, analysis point of view, not just by you, the human, but by other AIs.
Right, and this is where you get into your autonomy that you were talking about earlier.
That's correct.
So does this link then? I mean, you've coined the term AI economy. I think you've coined it, and does this kind of all funnel into the AI economy?
Yes, it does. So the reason I look at it, I call it the AI economy, is because it's not just an ecosystem of separate things.
Right.
It's all connected. And, and IoT is a fundamental part of this AI economy, right? Because if you just look at AI as making everything smarter, more in tune with market needs, opportunity analysis, if you look at it as an economic force, a global economic force that sits on top of every industry, sits on top of every interaction, sits on top of media, healthcare, manufacturing, all of a sudden you have a very different perspective about it. So this is, if you look at the entire supply chain in terms of the AI economy, beginning with, IP, intellectual property, and then of course venture capital, and then in government investments, which are extensive. When you look at the number of companies that are involved just in R&D with AI, and then so now those are four sectors, economic sectors, of which there already are hundreds of billions of dollars spent. All right, the better part of $500 billion spent just in those before you get to monetizing them with products. Right. So now you're talking about, and then the monetization of the products is just beginning, right? And you got, medical technology is not simple thing is not, doesn't talk to each other as much as it will, right? Even in an age of, Bluetooth and all that, it will. So what are the implications for every device, every product, every service, and then every virtual object on the web being AI enabled and also IoT enabled? Now you've got a very different kind of world, and it's the economics that will drive this, that will help this, that will make this a reality. Meaning, it's the e-commerce, it's the exchange of value, it's the ability to be able to create entirely new business models. It's enabling and, if you will, transforming existing business models. I mean, when we talk about industry or manufacturing, I have a piece on manufacturing 4.0. You can't get there without this next generation of smarter AI.
No, I like it, and it kind of parallels something I call the outcome economy. But your AI economy, like my outcome economy, is the summation of a number of ecosystems. And within those ecosystems, you're saying AI is driving the different ecosystems. You could have outcomes driving them as well. But it's effectively, you're saying is, I didn't know the $500 billion spent statistics. That's huge. And what you're saying is you're calling it an economy because the ramifications of AI are economy-sized numbers, right? They're in the trillions, not in the billions. And so I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that.
It will, in other words, it will be, well, this is the early stages of it, and it will increase. And then it will, interestingly, it will go away. It'll become invisible because every
like all technology.
So things that we take for granted in healthcare or transportation or manufacturing, they'll just make those things more competitive and greater value, and you'll end up with, I think more efficient, more effective, but you'll end up with something else too. And that's the other point, which is you'll end up with a whole new economic order of businesses and business models that didn't exist before. Think about it.
Yeah. And this is why they're in this, that's where the big secret comes in, right? Because everyone's warring to get to this new economic world order that you're talking about.
Yeah. So in other words, what happens is it's like managing, I call game-changing trends is one thing, but being able to forecast them is really what I'm keenly interested in, because you don't want to be the last guy or gal to find, a chair when the music stops. You want to be on top of that. And and kind of what's happened is we've seen this with cloud analytics, is that people wait too long. Digital transformation we've talked about, people have waited too long, and they've been out competed by others, because keep in mind I believe the customer or the consumer are the ones driving change. They were the first ones. It was really the marketplace of customer and consumers that forced Microsoft and other computer companies to realize that the internet was something that people wanted. They wanted the internet. I mean, I remember battling with financial service companies about why they were going to not just allow, but they were going to enable their customers to put like their financial portfolios online so they could see, they would have visibility. Now you've got the blockchain, which again, we're just beginning. I'm working on a couple of blockchain IoT projects now, which I think are very dramatic, because it goes to some larger, I think, motivations that people have in the marketplace. Once there's transparency, once there's accountability, once there's trust vis-a-vis the blockchain, you're not going to go back on that. That's not going to. We're not going to. It's not. And you're not going to not be a network-based digital transformation company. Everybody is. You are or you're not. In other words, these are things you can't go back in time about. If you're producing great hot dogs or you're in the restaurant business, and you're producing a fantastic, chicken marsala, gee, that's great. But if you're in a world where these innovations are creating competitive advantages, you can't decide you're going to turn that off unless you want to go, make chocolate bars, and that's great. By the way, there's room for all of that in the marketplace. Not everything has to be enabled, but that chocolate, where you get your chocolate from, likely will be on the blockchain, and likely there'll be IoT sensors in the cocoa fields in Madagascar.
Yeah. No, and I certainly have my opinions on blockchain, and they're certainly related to the future, not the present. But I want to go back to what you're talking about, and in terms of the AI economy, and I want to bring in the concept of ROI here, because I agree with you. So you don't want to be, when that music stops, you don't want to be the last person that doesn't have a seat. In other words, you need to make sure you are in the market, you're in the game. At the same time, you don't want to be you don't want to be there before the market's ready. So what I generally advise my clients is do the strategic thinking now, roll it into your company's wider strategic thinking, and then you can decide when to pull the trigger. But you do need to move early, and I think this applies to AI as well from a strategic thinking point of view. But like you said, a majority, so AI's been around 60 odd years, right? And still a majority, I've had four people on this mini series so far. Two of them have PhDs. You're one of the two. It's still early days. It's still the eggheads mostly. So I'd like to get your perspective on doing business with AI, but in particular, how are you measuring the ROI on AI? I guess it's just a traditional way, but I'd like to get your thoughts on this transition from, there's a lot of spending that's going on all the way from developing that IP, and then trying to monetize that IP with VCs, but that's still early days. You're not going to reach escape velocity until you're able to go to scale, and Alexa's a good example, but until you're able to go to scale. So how do businesses, again, mostly who's listening to us right now, but how are they going to measure a return on this investment? Because it's still still futuristic, isn't it?
Well, yes, and yes and no, meaning it's still futuristic but you got to kind of reset how you're thinking about it, right? That's what I recommend. I mean, in other words, if you are expecting to do the AI thing, let me put perspective. If you're building a strategic plan, AI should be part of your strategic plan, whether you're planning to implement things over the next 30 days or the next 30 months. All right.
Agree. Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, you don't have to go whole hog. What I recommend to my clients, and my clients are generally the largest companies in the world, and then I've got the smallest companies in the world, which are startups. And what I recommend is that you carve out what I call these future labs, right? And the future lab concept is, all right, you don't have to necessarily, if you don't see a business case for implementing, a company-wide transformation or a product-wide transformation, AI, I get it. Okay. Not everybody's doing that. There are folks in the genomics area that, are focusing, specifically on that, or folks in manufacturing folks. But I would say when it comes to that, start a future lab. What's a future lab? Future lab, the concept of it's a small platform change that you're going to add AI and build up the case inside of that, where you're going to try some things, learn some things, quick failure, quick success. You're going to try some stuff up. So if you're in the energy space, a future lab is, which I've done with some clients, is, we're going to go work and put AI over here in this operation and see what we learn from that. We're not going to go all in, right? That's right. One. So, and you can, and that's what I'd recommend you do that. The other is from a product point of view. Maybe what we do is we for a SaaS-based company I'm working with, we decided that was a more comprehensive thing. That was a reason we added AI in stealth mode to a product offering, because it would be a key differentiator for competitive advantage in a very noisy marketplace. Okay? So this is where branding, business strategy, and product development meet. And by the way, we did it in like 2 months. We didn't do it in 6 years. So, having been part of the early stages of strategic planning and having helped create a lot of strategic planning, this whole idea of rapid strategic planning, where you're basically, you've got an idea, one page, or it's a deck with nothing, more than 10 slides. Boom, bang, we'll get this done now. Right? That's a very different
and we'll put it in front of customers before we spend a lot of money on
it.
Yeah.
And not even customers, but a lot of customers, you got to remember, are not, you want the right kind of customers, but often you got to do something. I mean, Steve Jobs didn't go to the board of Apple and say, this is when he came back, hey, I've got this great idea about, I know we're in the computer business, that's our core competencies and all that, but I've got this idea about doing a phone. And if he hadn't owned the company and controlled the company, the board would have thrown him out of there and replaced him again. Why? Because the core competency was what? Computing. What do we need a phone for? But the reality was the phone was the next computer, right? So what I'm saying is set up a future lab, recognize, try something from a product point of view that you think will delight people. And let me just use as part of a case, keep in mind what happened at Google, which has not been well written about, but what happened at Google was they were experimenting with there was a small, what I call a future lab company in London that had some AI, some machine learning breakthroughs, deep learning, really breakthroughs in AI. And they started integrating that into their search engine. All of a sudden, it started creating phenomena that they didn't quite understand, but it was producing metrics that were better than the human-enabled metrics. So they started turning over more and more. And I've seen this happen now on 3 or 4 occasions. When AI starts producing monetizable results, those are results that have metrics that can be measured, and those metrics can be translated into dollars. And Google's business is AdWords, and the speed and accuracy of matching up what people want and then monetizing that digital exhaust. They were results faster than anybody else was able to produce, either AI or human. So they made a shift. I know a number of other companies that have, again, hard, fast ROI with either trading platform. I mean, GE had a real estate platform that they were using what we call a black box, and they didn't understand quite exactly how the black box worked. But guess what? When making decisions for making large transactions, it showed up in a way they were able to use it to make analysis. They didn't exactly know how it worked, but it was giving them results that translated into the bottom line. Strong AI ROI. Same neural nets in the trading space that's been a well-kept secret for the past, I would say, almost 8 years or more, have been driving value in the trillions. People just don't talk about it. Now, the antithesis, the dark side of that, is the flash crash that happened, which, if you kind of examine that, was driven by basically
battling AIs.
Yes, battling AI.
Yeah, I know.
AI trader that went bad. There was a couple of $1 trillion plus worth of value that was sucked out of the economy. That was AI's misused in some regards. What I'm trying to say is that the horse has already left the barn. And when it comes to ROIs, there's a lot of people who are tight-lipped about the advantage, that this is their strategic advantage that is responsible for their ROI.
I think I think I want to frame what you said in a slightly different way, and I think it's a good way to kind of conclude our podcast with a best practice or advice to our listeners. And when I asked you about AI, what your response was, okay, I think you need to reset your thinking. Good, I'm with you on that. And then you said, Whether you're planning out 30 days or 30 months, you need to put together a strategic plan. Makes sense. And then I like this, carve out a future lab. So it's a relatively small budget. And then start adding AI to experiment. And then the next step being start adding it to your products, to gain this extra innovation for this competitive advantage. And then I think what I'm going to put words in your mouth, but I think what you're, to close the loop on the ROI is once you've integrated into your existing products, you can measure not necessarily their ROI, but their incremental ROI. And that incremental ROI from what the product was doing, whether it's a Google search or something different, to what it's doing, the ROI it's achieving with AI, does give you an incremental AI. So is that a good way to kind of summarize this, this best practice / way of measuring AI ROI?
Yeah, and I would just add to that really quickly, disrupt yourself first before you get disrupted, and don't be bold in trying some stuff. You got to have a culture that tries stuff before everybody else does, because if you look at the largest, most valuable companies in the world, they didn't get there because they didn't take risks or they weren't courageous. You've got to be willing to take risks and be courageous and try some stuff. If everybody else is doing it and you're not, that's one way. But I suggest that you step up and be bold, because I think you'll get a better return on investment.
I like that, being bold. Well, James, where can people find out more about you and your company's offering?
Well, globalfuturist.com is my website. You can follow me on Twitter at FutureGuru, #FutureGuru. And then if you want to get real-time insights, I have plenty of articles and podcasts, and not about podcasts, but video stuff on my website, but also my book, Future Smart. You can check that out. Future Smart will give you it's only good for the next 100 years. After that, don't email.
Yeah, it'll be like the emails that we were exchanging overnight. All right, well, I'll put this all in the show analysis notes like usual. And with that, James, thank you. It was very enjoyable and insightful, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks so much. Take care.
Okay. Well, that was episode 110. I like the binary-like number. And it's also made of 2s, 5s, and 11s. To get analysis of this episode, links to anything that were mentioned, plus the transcripts, just go to the show analysis notes. They can all be found at iot-inc.com/podcasts. And remember, if you sign up with the long version of the form, you'll get the transcripts to all the videos and all the podcasts on the site. If you're new to the podcast, subscribe to it. That way you get every episode delivered right to your device. And if you've been listening to it for a little while, there are 4 ways you can support it. You can share it on your blog, personal or company, if you think others will find it of value. You can share it on social. This would be great on LinkedIn and on Twitter. You can leave a rating or a review on iTunes. To do that, just go to www.iot-inc.com/iTunes. Well, it takes one click, maybe a little bit longer if you want to actually write your thoughts. And finally, you can sponsor it directly if your company wants to reach the show listeners, people like yourself, with an audio ad that's read on the show. Contact me. I'm your host, Bruce Sinclair. Thank you for listening. Until next time, may your path to IoT business be a predictable one.
You have been listening to the IoT Inc. Business Show.